Opening an ancient tomb. All archaeologists were shocked to see the mummy completely intact. In the 1970s, Chinese archaeologists discovered a strange coffin in Xich Feng, Inner Mongolia, China. Inside the coffin was the body of a woman wearing a dragon robe adorned with numerous precious pearls. The dragon robe in ancient imperial China was typically reserved for emperors. Anyone else who wore such a robe would be committing a grave crime and would face severe punishment, including the execution of their entire family. However, this was not the most surprising aspect. Despite being hundreds of years old, the woman's body remained perfectly preserved, with skin that still had the elasticity of a living person. When the coffin was opened, the experts were shocked by this bizarre phenomenon. The fact that she was wearing a dragon robe indicated that she must have had a noble status. At that time, archaeologists were extremely curious about the identity of the tomb's owner. In Chinese history, the only female emperor was Wu Zetian. This led to the question, could this be her tomb? However, after further examination, archaeologists confirmed that the tomb dated back to the Qing dynasty. It was very large, measuring 148 feet from east to west and 344 feet from north to south, covering an area of approximately 53,820 square feet. The tomb's owner also wore a phoenix crown made of gold. The woman's height was about 4 feet 11 inches to 5 feet 3 inches, and her hair was 29.5 inches long. She wore a gold ring and a gold bracelet, along with a pair of red embroidered shoes. Upon examining the body, experts also discovered blood marks on her thigh. However, the cause of these injuries has yet to be explained. Finally, after examining the inscriptions on the tombstone, experts identified the woman as Princess Yingxian, the third daughter of Emperor Kangxi. She was a princess dearly loved by the emperor. Her mother, Empress Yi, was one of Kangxi's favorite consorts. Despite her father's affection, Princess Yingxian was engaged at the age of 9 to Oh Boy, the son of the Balin Prince Eni, a leader of Inner Mongolia. This marriage was part of the Qing dynasty's political strategy to solidify its relationship with the Mongol tribes and maintain national stability. When the princess turned 19, she married and moved to her husband's home. Following this political marriage, Emperor Kangxi bestowed upon her the title of Gulan Yingxian Princess, a title traditionally reserved for daughters born to the empress. Princess Yingxian's marriage to Oh Boy was a happy one. However, in the 6th year of Emperor Yongzheng's reign, 1728, she passed away at the age of 56. To honor her contributions to the country, Emperor Yongzheng granted her a magnificent dragon robe adorned with pearls. This honor was unique in the history of China's feudal dynasties. It also reflected her high status during her lifetime. After her death, her son built a grand tomb for her in the grasslands as a tribute to her. Despite identifying the woman's identity, the mystery of why her body was so perfectly preserved remains unsolved. Archaeologists are still searching for answers. Of course, this is not the most extraordinary discovery that archaeologists have made. Around the world, archaeologists have made countless fascinating discoveries. Let's continue watching this video to find out what those discoveries are. The incomplete remains of the princess, most loved by Emperor Qin Shi Huang. As the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang is celebrated for his countless monumental achievements, which have been passed down through generations. However, historical records about Qin Shi Huang rarely mention his children. In fact, most people only remember his 2 sons, Ying Huhai and Ying Futu, even though research suggests that Qin Shi Huang had more than 33 children. According to Chinese media, in 1976, archaeologists discovered a tomb complex near Shangxiao village in Shandong province, China. The complex contained 17 ancient tombs, and one of them only had a bronze sword, with no human remains. The other coffins were scattered, with skulls and limb bones disorganized. These tombs resembled those of ordinary people rather than those of royalty. However, based on some artifacts found at the site, archaeologists concluded that the tomb complex was likely the burial site of Qin Shi Huang's daughters, who were murdered by Ying Huhai. Subsequently, archaeologists unearthed 2 personal seals, one of which was inscribed with the name Ying Lu, possibly belonging to one of Qin Shi Huang's sons. The other seal, inscribed with Yang Si, was believed to belong to Princess Ying Yangman, a daughter of Qin Shi Huang. According to historical records, Qin Shi Huang died of illness while traveling across the empire. The throne was supposed to pass to Crown Prince Futu, but his second son, Ying Huai, conspired with Zhao Gao, Li Si, and others to alter the emperor's will. In the end, Ying Huai ascended to the throne, and to eliminate any future threats, he had everyone who opposed him killed. He buried many concubines alive, publicly executed 18 of Qin Shi Huang's sons, and forced 4 other sons to commit suicide. Even the princesses were not spared from death, with 10 of them perishing in this political purge, including Princess Ying Yangman. In total, more than 30 of Qin Shi Huang's children were killed by Ying Huai. There are not many records about Princess Ying Yangman, but she was widely known as the most beloved daughter of Qin Shi Huang, not only because of her striking appearance, but also because of her harmonious relationship with her siblings. Despite this, Ying Yangman could not escape her tragic fate. When archaeologists discovered the tomb believed to be hers, they found the skeletal remains in the coffin to be severely damaged, with numerous knife wounds. A complete arrowhead had even pierced her skull. This shocking scene left many in the historical research community deeply disturbed and sorrowful. It is a testament to the terrifying nature of ancient China, where the thirst for power led people to commit horrific acts even against their own closest family members. The tomb of favoring women over men, the wife buried with gold and silver, while the husband had nothing. In the 1980s, an elderly man in Harbin, China, discovered a stone slab engraved with intricate patterns while digging the foundation for his house. Recognizing the signs of an ancient tomb, he alerted the local cultural relics department, and experts came to evaluate and excavate the site. The excavation was conducted urgently, and as expected, an ancient tomb was uncovered. At the center of the tomb was a massive stone coffin. However, the coffin wasn't carved from a single stone. Instead, it was made from numerous small stone slabs bonded together with plaster. The surface of the coffin was intricately carved with detailed designs, and the corners were adorned with silver decorations, all of which indicated that the tomb's owner was of significant status. When the coffin was opened, experts found the remains of a man and a woman, identified as a married couple. Both were dressed in luxurious attire, and next to the woman's remains was a pile of gold and silver jewelry. The woman's head was covered with a yellow silk cloth, and she wore 9 layers of fine silk clothing. What puzzled the archaeologists the most was the stark contrast in the quantity of burial goods between the two remains. Most of the burial items were placed next to the woman's body, with a large amount of gold and silver jewelry. Additionally, the woman's body had a gold and agate necklace. This was a rare occurrence in joint burials, as ancient Chinese feudal society typically placed more value on men than women. Male tomb owners were often buried with the most lavish gold, silver, and burial items, while female remains were sometimes those of a sacrificial wife. Upon examining the remains, experts noticed that the woman's body showed several wounds, with the back resembling a stabbing wound from a sharp weapon. Her neck and waist also had numerous stab wounds, both large and small. Some white substances were found in her stomach, believed to be highly toxic. The experts concluded that the woman had been brutally murdered, and her family likely arranged for a grand burial to compensate for her tragic death. Further examination of the teeth revealed a significant age gap between the two bodies. The man was estimated to be around 50 to 60 years old, while the woman was around 30 to 40 years old. Based on this information, the experts speculated that the woman was Zhao Jingguo, the 32nd daughter of Emperor Song Huizong of the Song dynasty, and the man was Wanyan Yan, the son of the 3rd emperor of the Jin dynasty, Emperor Jin Shizong. However, the reason why these two individuals died and why they were buried together remains a mystery. Despite the passage of time, archaeologists have yet to find a definitive answer. The mansion, where the emperor who founded the Roman Empire died. In April 2024, excavations conducted by researchers from the University of Tokyo, Japan, at the northern base of Mount Vesuvius led to a groundbreaking discovery. They uncovered part of a mansion believed to have been used by Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, who reigned from 27 BC until his death in AD 14 at the age of 75. Historical sources indicate that Augustus died in a mansion located north of Vesuvius, and this building was later used as a memorial to honor him. However, the exact location of this site had never been precisely identified. In the 1930s, researchers uncovered the remains of a Roman-style mansion in Somma Vesuviana, a town at the northern foot of Vesuvius, a famous volcano that erupted in AD 79, destroying Roman cities such as Pompeii, Herculaneum, and other settlements. However, the excavation project by the University of Tokyo, which began in 2002, later determined that this mansion dated no earlier than the 2nd century AD. In other words, after the famous eruption. Recent excavations conducted by Japanese researchers in 2023 provided evidence of an earlier mansion beneath the structure from the 2nd century. Scientists now believe that this mansion is where Emperor Augustus passed away. Radiocarbon dating and the analysis of volcanic pumice covering the mansion confirmed that it was still in use during the first half of the 1st century AD. It was later buried by volcanic lava from the Vesuvius eruption in AD 79. This marks the first time that evidence of a mansion belonging to Augustus has been found to the north of Vesuvius. Notably, archaeologists identified a structure resembling a furnace, possibly related to a type of bathhouse, among the ruins of the mansion. The dating of charcoal from this structure indicated that the building was inhabited during the first half of the 1st century, though the furnace had fallen into disuse after the death of Augustus. This aligns with historical records that describe Augustus's mansion as no longer being used after his death. While the latest findings provide significant clues, more research is needed before the exact location of Augustus's mansion can be definitively determined. However, this discovery challenges the common belief that the northern slopes of Vesuvius only suffered minor damage from the AD 79 eruption and were less severely affected than the settlements to the southeast, such as Pompeii. The 400-year-old vampire child skeleton with shackled feet. Here's the story. The child was buried in the 17th century in the village of Pien, near the city of Bydgoszcz in northern Poland, at what appears to have been a cemetery for abandoned souls. According to the customs of the time, locks like this were used to protect a corpse in its grave. Archaeologists estimate the child died at around 5 to 7 years old. The skeleton was found only a few steps away from the skeleton of a female vampire discovered last year, who was buried at the same time with a sickle placed on her neck and a similar lock on her feet. Dariusz Polinsky, an archaeologist at Nicholas Copernicus University in Torun, said, "The lock shows that people were afraid of this child after it died." A third lock was also unearthed in the same cemetery, although only scattered bones were found nearby. Polinsky further noted that no other child skeletons were buried in this way at the site, suggesting this may be the only known example of such a burial practice in Europe. The living used such locks because they feared that dead children could return as ghosts, especially if their deaths were sudden or unusual. Polinsky has been leading excavations at Pien for several years, and his team has uncovered around 100 graves there. 13 other graves were excavated during the most recent dig. This cemetery wasn't a typical burial site for the village. It was likely located within the sacred grounds of a church, though its exact location is unknown. Burials within churchyard cemeteries were expensive, so poor people who couldn't afford the costs had to bury their loved ones elsewhere. This smaller cemetery appears to have been reserved for abandoned souls far from the church. For example, the grave of the female vampire discovered last year, with a sickle around her neck, clearly belonged to a wealthy individual. Archaeologists found gold threads in her clothing and golden streaks on her skull, suggesting she had ingested a gold-containing substance. Polinsky and his team are awaiting DNA analysis results from the woman's bones to learn more about her background, but their findings indicate she had been seriously ill. The team also hopes to analyze the DNA of the newly discovered child's remains, as they still don't know whether the child was a boy or a girl. Polinsky said, "Dead children were feared by the living because it was believed they could return as ghosts, especially if the child died suddenly or under unusual circumstances." Although the woman discovered last year and the child found now are both widely regarded as vampires, the term vampire wasn't used during that time. Additionally, another detail is that one of the child's jawbones was green, and archaeologists believe it was buried with a coin in its mouth, a common burial tradition at the time. Polinsky and his team are still analyzing the remains uncovered in this year's excavation, and they hope to return to the site next year to see what else may be found, further unraveling the mysteries of the past. iPhone found in a 2200-year-old tomb. In 2016, an archaeological team conducting research in the Tuva Mountains near the Mongolian border made a remarkable discovery. The object was found at the Alatay Cemetery in the Republic of Tuva, a federal subject of Russia. Strangely, the object resembled a modern iPhone in both shape and size. It was found in the tomb of a woman who has since been named Natasha by the archaeologists. The object found in her tomb has been dubbed Natasha's iPhone. Based on coins from the Five Tribes era discovered in the tomb, archaeologists determined that the iPhone dates back to the time of the Xiongnu, nearly 2,200 years ago. The object is made of a grayish-black material and is adorned with various precious stones, including turquoise, ruby, and mother-of-pearl. The object is rectangular, measuring 7.1 inches by 3.5 inches. However, as we all know, the iPhone was only introduced in 2007. So, the question arises, could this object found in the ancient tomb be a time-traveling iPhone? Or is it simply a similar object that happens to look like one? The answer is actually quite simple. Despite its resemblance to an iPhone, the object was later identified as the buckle of a belt. Women from the time, nearly 2,200 years ago, often wore belts with black stone buckles like the one discovered. Therefore, according to archaeologists, the excavation of Natasha's tomb with what appeared to be an iPhone from the Xiongnu period remains one of the most interesting discoveries at this site. Additionally, the tomb contained other objects, including earthenware pots. The site where the 2,000-year-old iPhone was discovered is confirmed to be in the Alatay region, which is also known as the Atlantis of Russia. It is located beneath the Sayan Mountains, in a large reservoir formed by the Sayano-Shushenskaya hydroelectric plant. This reservoir covers an area of over 240 square miles. However, in the summer, the water level recedes, exposing land that resembles a vast desert. When the water subsides for several months, scientists can take advantage of this to access treasures dating from the Bronze Age to the time of Genghis Khan. A total of 110 graves have been found on an island in the reservoir in the Alatay region. Another site called Terezin in the area contains at least 32 graves located closer to the shore. Dr. Marina Kilunovskaya from the St. Petersburg Institute of Culture and History said that this site holds many scientific mysteries. The graves of wealthy nomads buried here are often submerged at a depth of 55 feet. Finding Natasha's tomb along with the iPhone is not the first discovery by archaeologists. Previously, they uncovered two older skeletons at the Alatay Cemetery. One of the skeletons, referred to as the Sleeping Beauty of the Forest, was buried with a beautiful silk robe. Initially, archaeologists believed she was a nun, but upon studying the tools in her tomb, they realized she was a leather designer. The second skeleton was identified as that of a weaver, buried with her weaving loom. The entire region is considered an ancient burial site, spanning from the Bronze Age to the time of Genghis Khan. Hundreds of years old mummy found in a delivery bag. In 2023, the police in Peru seized a centuries-old mummy after discovering it inside a delivery bag belonging to a local courier. Specifically, Julio Tizar Bermejo was the one who hid the mummy, estimated to be between 600 and 800 years old, inside the bag he used for food deliveries while hanging out with friends at an archaeological park in the city of Puno, Peru. Local police became suspicious of the bag after noticing Bermejo acting drunk during a routine patrol of the park and were shocked to find the mummified body of an adult curled up in a fetal position inside the bag. The 26-year-old courier claimed that he had not intended to sell the mummy but had taken it out because his friend wanted to see it. He said that the wrapped mummy had been in his home for nearly 300 years. In a video, Bermejo even explained that the preserved mummy was kept in a box next to his TV and described it as his spiritual girlfriend, calling her Juanita. Bermejo stated, "At home, she stays in my room, she sleeps with me, I take care of her." However, contrary to his claims, Peru's Ministry of Culture confirmed that the mummy is actually that of an adult male over 45 years old, likely from the eastern Puno region of the Andes Mountains. It's not Juanita, it's Juan. As a result, Bermejo was arrested, and the Peruvian police launched an investigation into how he had come to possess the mummy. More than a year has passed, but no information has been released regarding the outcome of the case. Secret staircase by the Nile leads to a 3,500-year-old princess's chamber. At the foot of a small cliff on the west bank of the Nile River in Egypt, scientists discovered a secret staircase leading to a tomb, which may belong to a princess from the New Kingdom of Egypt. According to initial estimates, the tomb is likely from the 18th dynasty, circa 1550 to 1292 BCE, a period of the New Kingdom in ancient Egypt. This dynasty, also known as the Thutmose dynasty, refers to the four pharaohs named Thutmose, and it was a time when some of Egypt's most famous pharaohs, such as Hatshepsut, Amenhotep IV, Akhenaten, and Tutankhamun, ruled. The tomb lies hidden beneath a small cliff on the west bank of the Nile, within the Valley of the Queens. A team of researchers from Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities and the University of Cambridge, UK, discovered stone steps leading down to a burial chamber. This mysterious chamber was carefully constructed but is in poor condition due to damage caused by multiple ancient floods. The limestone and sand sediment from these floods have severely damaged the carvings and interior, making it difficult for scientists to identify the occupant of the tomb. However, scientists speculate that the tomb may belong to a member of the royal family of low rank, such as a princess from the Thutmose lineage or the wife of one of the pharaoh's sons. Of course, this is only a hypothesis. Researchers hope that when the mummy and grave goods are brought up, they will provide more information about the identity of the occupant, as well as details about their life and burial customs during the period in which they lived. 450-year-old mummy, holding a tattered letter. Its contents move future generations to tears. In 1998, in the Gyeongsang-dong area of Andong City, Gyeongsangbuk Province, South Korea, the region was designated for redevelopment into a new residential area. As part of this plan, several abandoned graves in the area were relocated. During this process, a tomb containing a mummy and several burial items was accidentally discovered. The condition of the coffin seemed fairly well preserved, leading researchers to initially believe the tomb was relatively recent. However, upon closer inspection, archaeologists found a letter inside the tomb. Based on the style of writing in Hangul and the contents of the letter, the identity of the mummy and the tomb's age, estimated to be 450 years old, was determined. The mummy was identified as that of a man named Yung Tai. His family consisted of 4 members: himself, his wife, 1 child, and another child his wife was expecting. At the time, a deadly infectious disease was spreading in the area, claiming many lives. Yung Tai was no exception, succumbing to the illness and leaving behind his wife and children at the age of 31. When his mummy was found, the letter he had been holding tightly caused much curiosity. Upon examination, the letter, written by hand in 1586 on hanji paper, a traditional Korean paper, measured 22.83 inches to 13.39 inches. The letter was written by his wife, who referred to him as Cha-Bae-won. In it, she expressed her deep emotions for her late husband. The letter conveyed the pain of their separation, her sorrow, and her sympathy for herself and their 2 children. She was now a widow, and her children were fatherless. The letter not only reminisced about the beautiful memories they had shared while he was alive, but also scolded him for promising to stay together until old age, only to suddenly leave her and their children. Despite her reproaches, at the end of the letter, she weakly asked him to return to her in her dreams. One of the translated lines of the letter reads, "Every time we lay beside each other, you always told me, 'Do others cherish and love each other like we do? How could you leave all that behind and go before me?'" Each word she wrote was filled with intense sorrow, evoking deep emotion in readers, often bringing them to tears. The love they shared was undoubtedly sincere and profound, and perhaps the sudden loss of her husband had shattered her to the point where she thought she might never recover. Inside the coffin, there was also a pair of hemp sandals from the Joseon era, also called Maturi sandals. While he was still alive, Yung Tae's wife had woven these sandals from her own hair, hoping that her husband would use them to endure his illness and recover quickly. However, Yung Tae never had the chance to wear the precious sandals. After his death, his wife wrote the heartfelt letter to him and buried it along with the sandals as a keepsake. The 140-year-old mummy of a little girl sleeping peacefully, like an angel in a glass coffin, holding a secret. On May 8, 2016, several workers were gardening at a house in San Francisco, California, when they unexpectedly came across a strange object buried beneath the ground. Little did they know, they had just discovered one of the most famous modern-day mummies. The object was a small copper coffin with a transparent glass top. When they looked inside, everyone was astonished to see the face of a young girl, incredibly beautiful, with pale skin and pink lips. She looked as if she were peacefully sleeping, not like someone who had passed away. When archaeologists arrived to investigate, they were shocked to discover something even more astonishing. The girl hadn't died recently, but had been buried about 140 years ago. The girl was dressed in a long white dress, knee-high boots, and had a sprig of lavender in her hair. Her skin and blonde hair had been perfectly preserved, and the red rose she was holding was still visible through the glass coffin. The nameless grave was draped with purple velvet. The story of the nameless grave quickly gained attention, with the media highlighting that while mummies preserved in such perfect condition were rare, they had been discovered before. However, one as perfectly preserved as this little girl was extremely uncommon. Researchers immediately began working to uncover her identity. Alyssa Davey, a geneticist and founder of the Garden of Innocence organization, shared that they made a breakthrough when they found an old cemetery map in the University of California, Berkeley Library. After a year of research, they identified the girl as Edith Howard Cook, the daughter of a businessman. The Cook family was well respected in society at the time, so it was no surprise that Edith had been buried in such noble attire. Researchers even found living descendants of the family and confirmed that their DNA matched the strand of hair taken from Edith's remains. Edith had passed away just 2 months after her 3rd birthday. She died on October 13, 1876, exactly 140 years before her remains were unearthed. The cause of death was believed to be severe malnutrition. Initially, Edith's tiny coffin was buried in the Richmond District Cemetery, as was customary. However, in the 1920s, the cemetery was moved. Edith should have been one of the 30,000 graves transferred to Colma, but perhaps due to an oversight, her grave was left behind. Erica Carner, the homeowner where the glass coffin was found, was the one who had the authority to decide what to do with the remains. In July 2017, after the necessary studies were completed, the Carner family reburied Edith Howard Cook at the Greenlawn Memorial Park in Colma. To this day, Edith Howard Cook remains one of the most perfectly preserved mummies ever discovered. While it's not the first time a mummy has been found in excellent condition after centuries, it is incredibly rare to find one as perfectly preserved as Edith. The method of embalming used for Edith remains a mystery, though after much debate and research, the most widely accepted theory suggests 2 factors that helped preserve the body. First, the copper coffin, a rare material that doesn't degrade easily underground, and second, the coffin was sealed so tightly that no air could enter. However, it's also possible that the ancient people had a secret embalming technique that has yet to be uncovered by modern science. The forgotten world of shipwrecks. Archaeologists in the Black Sea made a startling discovery, so unbelievable that they themselves had to declare, "We can't believe our eyes," saying, "A forgotten world of shipwrecks has just been rediscovered." Over 40 shipwrecks have been lying motionless at a depth of more than 2,600 feet at the bottom of the Black Sea for over 1,000 years. The masts and hulls are still relatively intact, even after at least 7 or 8 centuries submerged in the ocean's darkness. Due to the lack of oxygen and the cold water temperatures at such depths, the usual decomposition of wood from moisture has not occurred. These newly discovered shipwrecks date back to at least the 13th and 14th centuries. Previously, archaeologists had mostly gathered information about maritime trade activities from the 15th and 16th centuries, with important discoveries such as the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus's journey to the Americas. However, shipwrecks from ancient times, still in such an ideal state of preservation, had never been found before. The Black Sea had once been known as an important maritime route for trade centuries ago. Grains, leather, livestock, textiles, food, and more were transported across this route. For European merchants in the past, the Black Sea allowed them to enter the northern branch of the Silk Road, where they would buy silk, satin, musk, perfumes, spices, jewelry, and gemstones. The tolls collected in the Black Sea were so profitable that during the 13th and 14th centuries, the cities of Venice and Genoa went to war over disagreements about the management of this maritime route. Archaeologists believe that there are tens of thousands of shipwrecks scattered across the Black Sea region, as the sea route was once very busy. Due to the low oxygen levels in the water, anything that sank to the bottom is almost certainly preserved naturally by the ocean without rotting away. The mummified couple, covered in gold, resting together for 2,000 years in an ancient temple. During an excavation at the archaeological site in the ancient city of Taposiris Magna on the Nile Delta in Egypt, archaeologists were astonished to discover two incredibly special mummies, believed to belong to two high-ranking individuals from the legendary Queen Cleopatra's reign in ancient Egypt. The mummies were carefully preserved and covered in gold leaf, a luxury reserved for only the highest-ranking individuals in ancient Egyptian society, indicating that they may have been close to Cleopatra. According to researchers, this couple might have been priests who played a crucial role in maintaining the power of Queen Cleopatra and her lover Mark Antony. The couple's tomb is located deep within an ancient temple. However, the tomb structures were not sealed, and the mummies have been water damaged over the course of 2,000 years and are no longer intact. At the same site, researchers also discovered 200 coins bearing Cleopatra's name and her likeness. Since the famous queen of the ancient world committed suicide in 30 BCE, her tomb has remained a hidden secret somewhere in Egypt. Over the centuries, there have been many rumors about the location of the tomb of the queen and her lover, General Mark Antony. In 2019, there were rumors that Egypt was about to uncover the tomb of Cleopatra and her lover. However, most of the information regarding the tomb of the famous couple was inaccurate. Recently, after finding the mummies of the couple, the research team believes that excavations at the ancient city of Taposiris Magna will soon reveal Cleopatra's final resting place. Although researchers have been excavating this site since 2005, only a small portion of the vast area has been uncovered so far. Dr. Glenn Godinho, a senior lecturer in Egyptology at the University of Liverpool, said, "Although covered in 2,000 years of dust, these mummies are relatively well preserved. They are covered in gold leaf, showing that they were important members of society." On the gold leaf covering one of the mummies, the image of a scarab beetle, symbolizing rebirth, can still be seen. The prominent nose and cleft chin of the queen depicted on the coins show that she was not as beautiful as the actresses who portrayed her on screen, most notably Elizabeth Taylor in the 1963 film. Interestingly, the temple where the noble couple is buried is located very close to the city of Alexandria, the capital of Egypt during Cleopatra's time. Having two important figures guarding this temple could suggest that Cleopatra and Mark Antony may have been buried nearby. Dr. Kathleen Martinez, a scholar from the Dominican Republic, is currently leading the excavation at the Taposiris Magna Temple. After over 14 years of working at the site, Dr. Martinez and her colleagues are more convinced than ever that Cleopatra's tomb will soon be discovered nearby. Cleopatra's tomb is believed to have been built in 30 BCE, alongside her lover Mark Antony. Sadly, despite extensive efforts, modern archaeologists have not yet been able to pinpoint the exact location of the famous couple's tomb. The mysterious village, sunken beneath the ancient lake. Deep beneath the turquoise waters of Lake Ohrid, known as the Pearl of the Balkans, scientists have recently discovered a village. This may be the site of the earliest human settlement in Europe, but the question of why it was hidden inside a fortress of spikes is something researchers are still trying to understand. According to archaeologists, a stretch of the Balkan lakeshore in Albania was once home to settlers about 8,000 years ago. The village, with its raised houses, has become the oldest village ever discovered in Europe. Radiocarbon dating indicates that this settlement dates back to around 6,000 to 5800 BCE. The settlement is believed to have been home to about 200 to 500 people, living in stilt houses built on the lake or in areas frequently flooded by rising waters. During the archaeological excavation, the research team uncovered some astonishing secrets. They found evidence that the settlement was protected by thousands of flat wooden spikes arranged as a barrier. To build this defense, the settlers must have cut down an entire forest. However, the researchers have not yet figured out why the villagers needed to protect themselves so firmly. They estimate that around 100,000 spikes were planted into the lake bed. Lake Ohrid is one of the oldest lakes in the world, having existed for over 500,000 years. Thanks to skilled divers, archaeologists have been able to search for artifacts on the lake's floor, discovering many pieces of petrified wood and valuable oak fragments. The analysis of tree rings has helped the research team reconstruct the daily life of the settlers and gain valuable insights into the climate and environmental conditions of the time. The 300 Ancient Monsters Tomb, containing life-saving elixirs for humans. An ancient cypress forest, dating back to the heyday of the extinct Neanderthal species, was once submerged beneath Mobile Bay in the Gulf of Mexico. It wasn't until Hurricane Ivan in 2004 that it was partially exposed after being buried for 60,000 years. In December 2019, a team of scientists from the University of Utah and Northeastern University, funded by NOAA, returned to the forest. In 2020, after several months of research, they revealed extraordinary findings. According to Dr. Francis Choi, the lead scientist at the Maritime Science Center at Northeastern University, they examined organisms buried within the wood and discovered 300 ancient creatures. These were small, bizarre, but incredibly valuable monsters. One of these species includes ancient shipworms. They also identified 100 species of bacteria from these creatures, many of which were new. They successfully decoded the DNA of 12 strains and discovered that these bacteria have the potential to produce antibiotics, painkillers, and groundbreaking cancer drugs. Additionally, many ancient viruses found in the forest could defeat modern viruses, potentially leading to highly effective biological remedies. Their expedition has been interrupted due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but the researchers have stated that they plan to continue using unmanned underwater robots to map the forest in 3D and then return in person next year. Notably, the research team believes that this eerie forest may harbor many strange plants and animals that could be used in industries such as textiles, paper production, food, renewable fuels, animal feed, and chemical manufacturing, all of which are key to modern life today. Gateway to the underworld of the ancient Maya. In 2021, divers in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula discovered a canoe and skeletal remains deep inside an underwater cave at a depth of 15 feet. In total, archaeologists found 38 sets of bones, including human foot bones, likely from a woman, along with bones from an armadillo, a dog, a turkey, and an eagle. The abundance of armadillo bones and the presence of human foot bones led researchers to conclude that the canoe may have been used by the Maya in a ritual and deliberately placed in the cave. This idea is based on the fact that armadillos are skilled swimmers and can hold their breath underwater. Researchers believe these items may have been meant for use in the afterlife, as the Maya believed that caves and cenotes, natural wells, were gateways to the underworld. Alexandra Biar, an archaeologist from the French National Center for Scientific Research, explained, "There are images in Maya pottery where the armadillo appears as the stool of the gods. The canoe itself provides additional evidence that it was used as part of a sacred ritual. When the canoe was first discovered during an excavation for a railroad project, archaeologists estimated its age to be between 830 and 950 AD. However, new carbon dating analysis shows that the wood of the canoe dates back to the 16th century. The 3,500-year-old unfinished monumental stone obelisk, never erected. There are about 30 ancient Egyptian-style obelisk stone towers around the world, with the tallest being the Lateran obelisk in Rome, which stands at 150 feet tall. However, there is an even more massive monument that many people have never heard of, likely because it was never erected. This is the unfinished obelisk, one of the most important archaeological discoveries of ancient Egypt to date. It is also the heaviest single monument ever attempted by the ancient Egyptians. According to science, the unfinished obelisk was discovered in the early 20th century in a quarry in Aswan, southern Egypt. This 3,500-year-old structure is embedded in a giant granite block, seemingly abandoned over time. Hatshepsut, the fifth pharaoh of Egypt's 18th dynasty, ordered the construction of the unfinished obelisk between 1473 and 1458 BCE as a supplementary obelisk to the Lateran obelisk. During the construction process, something went wrong, causing large cracks in the stone that are still visible today. This rendered the monument unusable as an obelisk. Nearby, experts also found part of the base of the obelisk, which had been partially carved and might have been intended to help keep the obelisk upright. Had the unfinished obelisk been erected, it would have stood about 1/3 taller than any other obelisk ever discovered. weighing up to 1,290 tons and standing at about 138 feet tall. Even moving the unfinished obelisk off the ground would have been an incredible engineering feat, let alone erecting it. This has led scientists to question how the ancient Egyptians were able to handle such a massive granite block, and this remains one of the enduring mysteries challenging archaeologists today. As you can see, history continues to hide many secrets. It is through archaeological discoveries that we catch rare glimpses into the world of our ancient ancestors. In particular, the early decades of the 21st century have seen scientists and archaeologists uncover remarkable and extraordinary findings about the ancient world, many of which have changed or challenged our existing understanding of certain scientific and archaeological fields. What about you? What do you think of today's discoveries? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. For now, goodbye, and see you again soon.